There's the lighting.
Okay. There's no floating fairy balls this week. I'm going to spare you guys that. What's up, everybody? This is Jake with the Code Duck channel. I am just coming to you this week. I've had a bit of a bad week. Some of you may or may not know that I struggle with autism, so my particular wiring makes it very difficult for me to get up and get motivated sometimes, but I'm motivated right now, and I've had a little bit of a better day today, so I'm going to talk about something that is very, very dear to me as far as what I do for work. I'm a software engineer, and I write automation code, web automation code to be specific. But today I'm going to talk to you not about books, although I will be mentioning and leaving in the description the latest part of my book is up, Hewn from Living Stone on Wattpad. If you want to check that out, I would be more than thrilled if you guys would give that a read. I'm very happy with it, starting to really get into the plot a little bit. But what we're going to talk about today is 5 things that slow websites. So I build websites for people, or that's not really true. I don't build websites for people, rather I optimize them. So people that have websites for their business, their small business or e-commerce websites, my job is to come in after the website's been built and optimize it, because it's commonly believed in the industry that for every second over 2 or 3 seconds that your website takes to load its homepage, you lose 7% of your leads. So basically 7% of the people that start going to your website from Google or wherever they're coming, if it takes longer than 2 or 3 seconds, they will leave before your website even loads, and you will totally lose out on that opportunity for business. So a lot of what I do is coming in and optimizing a website, whether it's WordPress or Drupal, or if it's built custom code with HTML and CSS, which I don't get a lot of. A lot of what slows websites is using frameworks, which we're going to talk about when you don't need them. So we're going to get into the 5 things that I see most often that slow websites down that I have to fix. And the first one we're going to talk about is using front-end frameworks when you don't need them. I think a lot of people, because there's so much buzz in the industry of web development, they want to use WordPress, they want to use Drupal, they want to use React, they want to use Angular, they want to use Gatsby and Redux, and they want to put all these things into a website that's ultimately just for like a plumbing business or something like that. And I think so many folks that build websites for a living and development studios and design studios, I think they get caught up in this as well, because so many of their clients ask for it and won't believe them when they say you don't need that. I think a lot of what slows things down is, using JavaScript to accomplish something that can be done with a CSS transition, using your front end to do like hashing and encryption, which it's not really meant to do, you're not offloading to your back end. I think so many people get caught up with what the new hotness is. A lot of people know what Bootstrap is, which is a CSS framework that basically allows you to, it has like a grid system and foundation, which has like an X, Y, float style system. When you're loading in, like let's say you're loading in Foundation, even the minimum CSS file for Foundation is a couple megs, I think. So you're loading in a lot more than you would ever need, because you're loading in every single capability that framework has that you're not going to use. So I think if you're building websites, you're just getting into web development, you're just getting into building things, I think a better investment of your time, and I'm always going to say this, is to learn the language or the markup and style sheets themselves rather than a foundation that uses them. So for instance, if you're getting into web development and you want to learn JavaScript, don't learn React. React is not going to help you to begin with. React is a framework. It's built on JavaScript. I would say, if you want to learn JavaScript, learn ES6 or learn vanilla JavaScript, because that helps you to think pretty critically about a problem rather than just like the React or the Angular way to do it. Learn TypeScript if you want. I'm a fan of TypeScript because I started in C# and TypeScript is kind of like Microsoft's version of JavaScript, so it's really familiar to me syntactically. But there's no need to use like Bootstrap if you're building a website for like a local computer repair shop. Learn CSS Flex and CSS Grid. That is my recommendation for you there. Learn them both, actually, because they're used in conjunction a lot of the time, and they're great for that. So don't worry about frameworks. Frameworks are not going to help you in the beginning. So don't rely on those. Learn the language that's beneath it, which would be HTML. HTML5 would be specifically this time. CSS3. Specifically, we're going to be talking about Flex and Grid, or not we're talking about. You're going to learn those. But Flex and grid are how we do the layouts and style sheets in CSS. And CSS transitions are huge because a lot of things that people load the entire jQuery library in or do in JavaScript, which they don't need to do, can be done with a transition in CSS. And also JavaScript itself. Specifically, you'd want to go with like ES5 or ES6, which is the ECMAScript standard for JavaScript, which just basically allows you to learn a language rather than what to type. So for me to put this to you in this way, imagine let's say you want to learn Japanese. But rather than learning how to speak Japanese, you just memorize all the lines to a movie that's in Japanese. So you don't know what you're saying, really. You know what to say, but you don't really know what it means. So like if somebody were to come up to you and say, "Itenki desu ka?" Think through like, okay, what did the person in the movie say when someone said "Itenki desu ka" to them? What do I say? So desu, something like that. So you would unfortunately not really know what you were saying. You would just know what the scripted response is, and that's not going to help you. It's not going to help you in everyday life because you haven't learned the language. You've learned lines to a movie that was in that language. That's what learning a framework rather than a language in programming is like. So take it slow, take it step by step, ignore the buzz, learn what you like about a language, and go from there. Second thing that we're going to be looking at as far as what slows websites down is not using next-gen web formats for pictures. There's a lot of argument in the web community about what's best for the web as far as media goes, and we're talking specifically pictures here. Is it PNG? Is it JPEG? Is it TIFF? Is it GIF? Is it what I've found? The one that I use most often and the one where file sizes are reduced a lot is WebP. Or .webp is the format that I use a lot when I see PNGs and JPEGs, and it's usually because the photos that I work with are large background images. And you'll find that as the file sizes get up there around a megabyte for a photo, like a high definition photo, and as content gets higher and higher resolution on cameras and phones and GoPros, you're really going to want the higher compression standards of later web optimized file formats for images. And every time somebody comes to your website, those images are going to have to be downloaded if they're not cached, which we'll cover in a minute. So the smaller download sizes are best, especially when a lot of websites are viewed on mobile nowadays. And I don't care what AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, US Cellular, Straight Talk, what they say. On most occasions, especially where I live in the East Coast, you're lucky to pull 2 or 3 megabits per second, even on LTE. You're going to want to shoot for every device that connects to this website only gets like a 2 or 3 megabits per second connection. That way, even if somebody's on like 3G or really chugging, like struggling 4G LTE, they're going to download your website really, really, really quick. And that's what you want. Especially that's what your clients are going to want because of that rule. Every second over 3 is cost them 7%. And it stacks. 2 seconds is 14%, etc. Next thing is write your own JavaScript. You have to understand what you're doing, not just know what you're typing. That's something I'm huge into. In the beginning, you're gonna have to just know what to type, the basic principles, and then dig into what's going on under the hood, and then you can worry about branching out using frameworks. So the next part we're gonna be looking at is not using the right tool for the job. I know I've said a lot, like in this video so far, don't use frameworks. Don't, write your own JavaScript. And those things are extremely true for smaller projects. You really, really don't want to use frameworks for smaller sites. But if you're building like a Dropbox clone, or you want to build like a Reddit clone, like bigger projects that need to scale, that's when you want to use your frameworks. So if you're building a medium to large project, something that you're building at work, if you're building banking software, something that's going to handle millions of requests a day or hundreds of thousands of requests per second, even millions of requests per second, that's when you're really going to want to use a framework, because writing scalable code is difficult. Code that's going to accommodate more and more users as things get more like mature is something that's really hard. That's when you want to rely on your frameworks, because teams have already put that stuff together. So that's really where you want to use your frameworks, but use the tools you know. And the last thing we're going to talk about is caching. So use the caching that you have available. Every modern web server has caching involved. So just basically your static images. So if you have background images, favicons, images that aren't going to change a lot, make sure you cache those for about a year. That's a big thing, maybe even longer. Cache your style sheets, so those don't have to be pulled in every time. Cache your HTML files, all your media files, make sure those get cached. And the only caveat really to that is when that's going to change a lot. So if you have like an Instagram style application that you're building, which is about photo sharing and about images and screenshots and selfies and things like that, I wouldn't cache your images explicitly for a year at that point, because they're always going to be changing. But if you've got style sheets and images that are going to be static, they're not really going to change all that often, just cache them for as long as you can. I would say about a year is a pretty good rule of thumb. So just make sure that you use the disk memory that you have rather than using your network cycles on your cloud storage or things like that. That's really just going to cost you money in the end, that it's not going to gain you anything. It's just going to slow your website down. Let your backend do its job. Don't force the JavaScript on the front end or the front end to do what it's not designed to do. If you don't, in a good way to tell what it needs to do and what it doesn't, is if it 100% cannot or should not be done by the back end, like dynamically loading pages, or animations on your website. If these are things that JavaScript should do, dynamic loading of pages with Ajax or even more current technologies, that's what JavaScript's for. Use it for that. But if you're programming like a drop-down menu and you're needing to throw jQuery into the web page to do that, there's no need at all to do that. You can use the CSS checkbox hack. You can use all sorts of things that just do not require you to have the front end do it. And as far as like loading data information from the database, you don't have to make calls to the database from JavaScript. It can be done with the back end. Just put a route that stores into the back end, stores into the database from the back end. You really don't need JavaScript to do that. So unless you absolutely need JavaScript to do it and your back end can't or shouldn't, just let the back end do it. Otherwise, use JavaScript. So that's the 5 things that I had for today that I see personally slow down websites a lot, that I have to fix, that other people just forget to do or don't know to do. If you have other things that you see personally a lot, leave it in the comments. A constructive conversation about it, about what we see as contractors and developers and optimization folks and web developers that have to fix these problems all the time, that other people just don't seem to. And that way the next generation of web developers that's coming up right now and watching videos like this doesn't have to worry about it. They already know, and we can make the web a better place. So this is Jake with the Code Duck channel. I have links to some Medium articles that I've written, as well as my Wattpad book, which this BookTube channel is typically about. Chapter 8, Hewn from Living Stone, is up now on Wattpad. Give it a read, give it a like, leave a comment, tell me what you liked, what you didn't like, so that the next chapter can be even better. And until then, this is Jake with the Code Duck channel signing off.